actually doing the installations, the configurations, putting the policies and procedures in place, migrating content, building things from scratch and up, and managing systems. A lot of my background is in that sphere. So for me, coming into Adobe CQ is a little bit of a different environment, but at the same time, given everything that I've done, it's very exciting to come in and put in this type of environment, because our web authors are not coders. So a lot of people in the room here, how many are developers, strictly do development? How many are on the business side? Okay, so I've been on both sides of the fence. So for me, with Adobe and being able to play both sides and coming into our environment where the people who are building our websites are really content people. They're not developers. And what gets me very excited about the Adobe environment, and I'll show you some examples of some things that we're doing, is they don't have to code. So in the Adobe CQ environment, you don't have to be a coder to actually be a web author. Development can give all the tools that our web authors need with the components, and they just need to be able to do the content, which for us, with 900 plus web authors for 800 plus websites for 500 departments, think of somewhere where you've worked where you might have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 web authors for an entire site. So you can imagine kind of the magnitude of the enterprise environment that we're putting into place. So not only does it need to be easy to use, but it's got to be scalable. It's got to be open source so that we can go in and do the custom development that we needed to be able to do. But at the same time, CQ environment has a lot of out-of-the-box components that we're able to use. Some of them, as we've found, we can simply go in and say we want to change some of the dialogue to make it a lot easier for a web author, because again, they're not familiar with coding environment, and they're also in our sphere, they use Dreamweaver and they use Contribute. So they're used to either a split screen view or looking at a bunch of text and dragging things on, or if they're really savvy, which we have a lot of people, they can do it in code view, and they can actually code a lot better than I can, which is very nice. But what we have done with our environment and what we're looking to do is we want to take kind of the code aspect out so that they don't have to, but we're not removing it. So as we move along, and one of the things that we've also discussed and are putting into place as part of the training program that I'm developing is the idea of people advancing to different levels of web authoring. So basic authoring, they're going in and doing content, passed a training class, certified for that. Well, somebody wants to get a little bit more savvy and they want to be able to code in the environment within certain realms. We're obviously not going to let somebody just drop anything into the environment, even though it should only just break their site. They'll go through more training classes and get certifications so that they have the ability to code if they so choose. But the idea of what we're doing is you don't have to do that. Because if you think about Stanford medicine and what all it encompasses, we've got doctors, clinicians, lab people who are doing websites. We've got lots of admins, managers who are doing websites. So we're not a technology type environment. So it's not like where a lot of you are from or where I've come from, where it's lots of tech. We've got very content-oriented people. And as you can see from the site up here, this is actually our front page, it's content. It links to information. So it's text and images. And probably about 90% of our web pages are text and images. Well, that can get very kind of boring when that's all that it is. So as you can imagine, for a lot of our web authors, their sites are static. So somebody might go in every year, every 6 months, 3 months to go in and update some content, but it stays fairly static. And one of the things that we're looking to do is make it a lot easier for them to go in and update their content, because doctors can promote the research that they're doing, departments can promote the resources that they offer for patients, clinicians can give information about what they're doing and make it a lot easier. And that's one of the reasons why we chose Adobe CQ, at least for our environment, is to make it so that our web authors, it's easy for them to go in and update their content so that it's not static. Yes?
What other platforms were you looking at before choosing them?
That's a very good question. So we get asked a lot why we didn't go to Drupal for our environment. And if you've ever used Drupal or another type system like that, it's very good to enter the information in as a form, but to have the kind of WYSIWYG idea of I enter information, I can actually see it in the web page, and at least in my interpretation, since I've used it, experience with it, is I feel it's more of you need to be a coder or have that technology mindset to use a tool like that. And my boss, Mark, who's the right here, who's the director of IRT for School of Medicine, could add a little bit more to that. But one of the big reasons is, again, we have content people, and we have people who really want to be able to see their changes right in front of them. So again, they've come from a Dreamweaver background, a contribute background, and it doesn't give them kind of that look and feel. And in our experience in going through it and vetting Adobe CQ, it was more of an author-friendly environment, because we want to push content. We want them to be able to update it a lot easier. We don't want to have them have to, even though Adobe's got a learning curve for them. Drupal, for most of our environment and training our authors, would be a huge learning curve.
I can answer that, because I think this is actually before you joined our team. We looked at every leading enterprise platform that Gartner outlines. So SDL Trident, we looked at Sitecore, we talked to HP, we talked to Clickability, or whatever they are now, Limelight, I guess. We looked at all of those things, and the open source, what could we do with Drupal and WordPress. And the reason we chose it came down to a handful of things, being authoring experience, because that is our holy grail that we had to solve. So the first thing I would do is I'd ask Trident, okay, show me your authoring interface. Oh, thanks for talking. It was impossible. And some of these guys had even Drupal has interesting directions, but they're not even close to the maturity, and sometimes when we use CQ, we're not convinced it's mature either, but the maturity of usability, I would say. And then when it came to, say, a WordPress or Drupal, the amount of effort we have to do to make it get to that point was so high. I'd rather just pay cash and have a support contract than having to develop a whole proprietary front end to something. So I'm not dogging those systems for the right cases, for the right scenarios. Even Drupal for many places on campus, perfectly good tool. But for our use case, it wasn't. The second thing was technology. Because we were in this Dreamweaver static world, we had a lot of Java and JavaScript capabilities, because that's because we had no databases for our content. So we built all these browser widgets and so forth. So our capability and our development staff is staffed with architects and developers in the Java stack, essentially. So the .NET stuff was a non-starter. Even PHP we could learn it, but we didn't really want to go down that path. So that's probably a more complete answer to your question. We looked far and wide for it.
I was just curious.
Yeah, we looked at everything.
Through how we went through.
Yeah, there's one, I was looking at my emails just now there was one that came close in user experience. If I find it, I'll throw it out. But it actually was more expensive than AEM for us for some reason.
Something more expensive than AEM?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
I'm going to look it up and I'll tell you.
It could only be the fact where tool that Oracle bought.
It wasn't that, but it was, yeah, someone, I mean, obviously we get education pricing for Adobe, so it's a little different maybe, but still, you know, the number of zeros behind the check is pretty high. And, yeah, the guys, we got a first education bid from someone else, and it was actually higher. I just forget who they were, because, you know, I was like, forget that.
So, the editing tools, bouncing off what you were saying, are pretty impressive out of the box. So, would you find yourself extending or tweaking to fit your environment?
Very good question, because we are in the middle of that with our alumni site, which is one of them that I'm going to show you. Essentially, the text editor does tags, I mean, which is good. You can drop an image in, no problem. But for an example, the image component, I'm just going to use that one. It's multi-tab. So there's an advanced tab, so you can go in and put in the pixels and other information. Well, if you know your users, they're going to drop in an image.